Okay, so this is generally what I did to stop being addicted to video games. So as I mentioned, because I studied video games development and design at university, I was able to firstly understand why video games were uniquely addictive for me. And also, essentially, video games trained my mind to problem solve, because most of what you're doing in video game is essentially problem solving. Obviously, there are the rare exceptions where some video games you're not really solving a problem, you're just having an experience or a story is being told. But large amounts of video games are going to involve solving problems of some kind, even if it's just second to second, destroying this, building this, that's still a form of problem solving to achieve a certain goal. This means that from the around 26 years of playing video games, it essentially had trained my mind to be problem solving. So this meant that one of the things I did when I really realized, okay, I really need to stop playing video games, it's now just taking over my life, I thought, okay, if this was a video game, what would I do? If I was playing the character of myself and I'm looking, down and seeing myself as the character, kind of like the game The Sims, for example, what would I do that's different from what I'm doing now? Because you can imagine I tried for many years and I just couldn't do it. So then I realized, well, now that I have a more objective perspective and I treated it like it was a video game, then it became less personal. And so I was able to an extent let go of that identity aspect that was associating my identity with video games and being good at them and all the kind of subculture around it. And so because also I understood how games were designed, I was then able to apply video game design to my own life, because I was able to see a correlation between video game, what they call gameplay loops, and habit loops. And so a gameplay loop is essentially just, you could say it's almost like a very small flow chart where you have, let's say, there is a goal that's been identified, there's an action to take, and then to complete the goal, and then there's a reward. And that will keep looping. So it could be, let's say we use the example of, I'm just going to use Mario because it's an easy one. So you're playing Mario, there's an enemy like a Goomba, and you know that if you hit the Goomba, you get like a star from it or a coin. So then you go, okay, well, I just jump on the Goomba, now I've got the coin. That's a very, very simple gameplay loop. And it's a loop because it will continue over and over again. But that loop feeds into a bigger loop. So when you collect 100 coins through various different actions, which are essentially solving very small problems, like there's a block, it's a question mark block, and if you hit it, then you get a coin. Essentially, that's a very small and quick solving of a problem. But a bigger problem in the game is that when you die in the game, you lose a life. And if you run out of lives, it's game over. So to solve that problem, you need to collect 100 coins. And when you get 100 coins, you get a one-up mushroom. So you get an extra life. So by solving lots of smaller problems, you solve a bigger problem. And games are built on these loops. So you have smaller loops that feed into bigger loops. Those feed into bigger loops. Almost like, when I think about it, like how you can have planets and you can have satellites going around them, and then they can travel around the solar system, and then the solar system travels around the galaxy. Is actually kind of not too unsimilar, except gameplay loops can kind of change because they can split into different loops and it can get complicated. So that's a very simple gameplay loop. And I kind of realized, wait, if I'm looking at my life like a video game, I can see my own gameplay mechanics, I can see my own characters' behaviors. And interestingly, because, like I mentioned in another video, I had for many, many years depersonalization symptoms, which is a detachment from reality and the self, ironically, that made it much easier for me to view my life as a video game because I was kind of already experiencing it. So in a strange way, that also helped me to overcome depersonalization now that I think about it. And so through viewing my life like it was a video game, I was able to start noticing my own habits, my own patterns, and this then allowed me to see what habits were forming, what I could then start to predict when I would be more likely to start being more addicted to video games in the future. So I know, oh, I've got a stressful day, I'm pretty sure, coming up at work. It's highly likely, based on my patterns that I've noticed, my habit loops. I then know I'm probably going to spend way too long at night playing video games there. So then I could preemptively take actions to stop myself from doing that, so then I wouldn't get to work completely like with no sleep and then perform really badly. So this of course meant that I would almost have, and you may experience this if you have video game addiction, you almost develop this like other personality where on the one hand you're trying to stop this addiction, but on the other hand, if you do have a very stressful day, you may still find yourself the habit taking over and then just undoing all the work, all the barriers you created to stop yourself playing video games for hours. And so it's almost like a battle with yourself in the end, which lasted a very long time, but eventually I did it. So the first thing to do is, in the same way that your mind has been trained to solve problems, you can use that mindset to solve this problem. So one of the things video games has is they will give you a set of resources to solve the problem, and you know you can use, the answer to your solution will be amongst using those resources you have available. So I used whatever I could to overcome the addiction. So this meant not just physical things, but mental things, and I'll explain. So firstly, once you have the mindset of this is a problem I can resolve, just like I've resolved problems in video games, that's the mindset to begin with. Then you of course have to accept that you do have the addiction. That's, I know, is the hardest part, is to accept that you have a problem. That took me many, many years, but that's the first step always. So you have to become aware then of how big of a problem it is. And so applying that mindset of, if it was a video game, how would I approach this? What gameplay loops or habit loops do I have? That can help you to really gain awareness of the extent of the problem. Like, how does it affect my health? How does it affect other people? How is it impacting my work, my social life? All these kind of things. So yeah, problem solving is really the mindset you want. This helps to not feel as vulnerable, because of course we don't like to admit we have problems because it makes us feel vulnerable. That's understandable. So approaching it from that almost clinical problem solving mindset can help to a certain degree. And through doing those first parts, you also will then, you should be able to identify what's going on in your mind and your emotions. So what needs are video games meeting for you psychologically and emotionally? So is it giving you a sense of power and freedom? Is it giving a sense of having friends or socializing? Is it giving you a sense of control? And if that's the case, do you get that in other aspects of your life? And if you don't, and you realize, I only get these experiences and feelings from video games, then you've identified part of the issue. And then you, of course, when you've identified what needs that is meeting, you can look at the unmet needs. So if you realize, when I stop playing certain types of video games, so you may notice that you prefer certain types, then you can ask the question, well, if these games I play meet these particular psychological and emotional needs, then why are they not being met in my real life? Is there anything I can do to meet those needs? So a simple thing, if you realize, you know what, I socialize way too much online with people, and when I stop, I feel there's an emptiness, maybe I should go and start socializing in real life. And if you realize, you know what, I don't actually have like friends that are available, because, you know, some people travel and they're sometimes difficult, then you may have to just go and start a new friends group, which I know is not an easy thing. I had to do that. I had to go and just completely start a completely new friends group based on other interests that I have. But you might have to do that. And then you'll actually realize, oh, that need is now being met. That need for socializing is there and it's being met. And then you'll notice, I don't feel that urge anymore to go and play those kind of games. That's just one example. And once you've identified, okay, there's a problem and you know what needs need to be met and you look at healthy ways to meet those needs, you want to create barriers to stop you from playing video games so much. So you may not have to fully stop yourself completely, unless it's a really big issue, then you may have to just go for a couple of weeks completely not playing games, which is not easy if you've been addicted. So what you want to do is to at least gain some level of control, start creating barriers. So one of the things I used to do is I used to take my laptop or mouse and keyboard, depending on what device I had at the time, what machine, and I would just store it somewhere that would be kind of really awkward to get to. So I would only really use it if I absolutely had to, which might sound simple, but if you've had this addiction for a long time, your brain just kicks into automatic the moment you get stressed or the moment you have a particular trigger. Like let's say boredom. Typical thing is we feel boredom and then we just can't handle that feeling. Part of it is because if we're used to instant gratification and feeling the dopamine, when that goes, that sense of boredom can come really, really, really quick. So by creating limitations and barriers, we can gradually start changing our brain to not be so addicted to the dopamine of needing it. And also we can start to give ourselves space and time to find ways to meet the unmet needs. So yeah, you can do things like hide your controllers or use other people to make you accountable, which is a big, big thing. So you can say like, if you live with other people, here's my controller, here's my keyboard and mouse, only give it to me at these set times. You could do that. You could ask them to hide it. You could go as far as to, I think some games consoles allow you to set, you can have parental controls. You could ask somebody to set parental controls for you so you can only play at certain times. You could do it for yourself and make a password and just forget the password. These are the kind of extreme lengths people can go to. For PC, what I did was I created scripts, very basic scripts in Task Manager that would force the computer to switch off multiple times after a certain point at night. And then I purposely would write a password and forget it. So I would be forced to just stop at a certain time. And of course, I would later on find ways around it. So then I'd have to find ways around that. And it just kept going like cat and mouse, like a cat and mouse chase with myself. But eventually you figure out ways to completely stop. And of course, once you've got these barriers up, you can get creative with this. You may even have to just, delete all your games if it gets really extreme. If you have them stored digitally. Once you create these barriers and you do have those periods where you're not playing games, it will be uncomfortable and you will get those emotions that either you've been running away from or that sense of emptiness of a need not being met. And that's when you need to learn to sit with the feeling and fully accept it. And over time, you'll start to get a sense of what might be missing. You'll also notice thought patterns that will come up associated with the emotions. So you need to just learn to observe and accept them, which is a mindfulness practice. And so meditation can help with that too, but there are many other mindfulness practices. Simple one being just throughout the day, look at what's going on in my mind. What thoughts are coming up, and don't judge them. Just observe them and see if you can learn where they come from. Maybe it's thoughts from the past, from difficult experiences, for example. But of course, many of these issues most likely come from actual real life issues that are happening in your external world or have happened in the past. So if you do have stressful situations and that's leading you to focus so much on playing video games to the point where it becomes an addiction, you're going to have to go and solve the root problem, and you're going to have to stop avoiding it, which I know is difficult. If the problem is very big, like let's say you have a work situation that's very stressful, you don't necessarily have to resolve it all in one day, which I know that thinking can come from the instant gratification experiences that we can get used to. You can start by just taking small steps. And if this is difficult, of course, then therapy. Therapy will always essentially do all of these things, or at least will help you to begin to do it. But you can always speed up therapy by starting to do these yourself, and then using the therapy as part of your problem solving. So therapy can be a tool that you use to solve the problem. Or, if it's a game, an item that you can use to solve the problem. And another thing that can happen is once you do start to get a hold of the addiction, you do realize, oh, I don't feel like I need to play games every day. I feel like I can go maybe a couple of days, a week, and play a game like that. Then you may start to notice a certain emptiness that appears. That will eventually go. That's from, I guess, not getting the dopamine usually. If you're meeting those needs, then it's probably the dopamine that your brain is missing. So you want to create alternative hobbies. So I used to just do a lot of reading. So that way it helps to fill that temporary sense of emptiness. But of course, if that emptiness continues, then there could be something much deeper that's there as well. And so you may be thinking, well, I don't think I'm addicted to video games. That's good. But maybe you're not sure, which is what, for me, for a long time, I just wasn't entirely sure. So one of the things you can do is just stop playing games for 2 weeks or more and see what happens. Notice the thoughts you have. Notice how you feel. Notice if you feel any urges to go and play. Notice, do they stay for a bit? Do they go away? And if you notice the urge becomes stronger and stronger and stronger over time, then that hints that maybe you don't have video game addiction, but maybe you have the beginnings of it, or maybe maybe it could just be you're going through a period of your life where you're more now susceptible to it. So what I noticed is I could go for like 2 weeks, and then when I get to the 2-week mark, sometimes the urge would come back really strong. So I'd think, oh, I've done it. I've overcome the issue. And then I wake up one morning, but like, oh my God, I really want to play video games. And then I realize, I'm going to come home and I know I'm going to play video games, and then I have to find a way to get around that. So yeah, so that explains video game addiction and the things I did to overcome it. I should also mention that you absolutely have to persist. So in the same way that you would not give up trying to finish a game, in the same way that you won't stop trying to complete a very difficult challenge in a game and will spend hours and hours on it, you need that same amount of dedication and mindset and persistence in solving this problem. And you have to be prepared to fail over and over and over again. And every time you fail, you need to ideally make an actual physical note as to what you've learned for the next time. So you can see I literally did approach it like a video game. So try and see this as a video game, because that is what can help people to get out of a belief that it's not possible to gain back control, and to move them into a position where they see, you know what, this is a challenge and I can overcome it. And that one single shift of changing from I can't solve this to, yeah, you know what, I think I can. If you have that mindset, you can probably accomplish anything. So thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Take care.